This episode, we're investigating the fishing industry, which has a high risk of slavery in its supply chain. Next time you're at a supermarket, take a look at where the king prawns are from.
Thailand is one of the world's largest seafood exporters and the world's leading exporter of shrimp. In 2017, IJM and the Isara Institute conducted a study into the experiences of Cambodian and Burmese fishers in Thailand and found that 76% of migrant workers in the Thai fishing industry had been held in debt bondage and almost 38% had been trafficked. Victims describe illness, physical injury, psychological and sexual abuse, and even the murder of crewmates. Ron thought the few years spent on Thai waters would have been worth it for his family. Little did he know that ship would never return home. I only learned that I was trafficked when I was in the middle of the ocean. The Thai captain told me that I was sold. Life at sea was hard for Ron. Years passed as he worked tirelessly while men alongside him started to disappear. Some workers were pushed over the boat, Ron said. At one point, I saw a corpse. It was someone I knew. Back home, his family were waiting for him. They had no idea what actually happened. Ending slavery requires businesses as well as governments to take action.
When one corporation was made aware of the possibilities of exploitation in their fishing supply chain, they funded Isara Institute and IJM to undertake research.
This resulted in the launch of IJM's office in Bangkok. Since 2016, IJM has been working to combat slavery and trafficking in the Thai fishing industry.
Now we have IJM Thailand's Field Office Director to tell us more.
Hi, my name is Andrew Waswong and I serve as IJM's Field Office Director in Thailand based in the city of Bangkok. So what's happening in the seas of Thailand today when it comes to the problem of slavery? As my team has worked over the past years, we have continued to see cases involving physical violence of Burmese and Cambodian fishermen while they are working on boats. We've also continued to come across cases involving significant debt bondage. We are continuing to walk alongside vulnerable migrant workers and continuing to walk alongside our government partners who are police, prosecutors, and social workers in the government.
ระนองเนี่ยเป็นเมืองชายแดนติดพม่าคณะและกลุ่มเป้าหมายก็คือเป็นแรงงานพม่า
กระดานก็กลายเป็นจุดพาคนไปทำงานที่อื่นๆในประเทศไทยหรือในภาคใต้ส่วนก็จะเป็นจุดเริ่มต้นหรือจะเป็นเหมือนเป็นช่องทางของการค้ามนุษย์ในภาคใต้
ไดแซกอาจจะเก่งในข้อที่แบบว่าลงพื้นที่ได้ข้อเท็จจริงลงพื้นที่อะไรอย่างเงี้ยทีนี้การที่มี IJM เข้ามาเนี่ยมันทำให้มันสมบูรณ์มากขึ้น
We are also using new technology in order to help us zero in on exactly where these crimes are occurring. IJM has built a criminal analysis center which works as an information fusion center, pulling information from IJM's field level investigative reports, digital sources of information and evidence, social media, international fishing vessel tracking systems, and satellite imagery. And this is helping us to identify suspects and perpetrators of forced labor and zero in exactly where they are. So last, I'd like to leave you with the story of one survivor that I had the opportunity to meet. In one of IJM Bangkok's first cases, we investigated a cross-border international trafficking network between Cambodia and Thailand. And I got to meet 5 Cambodian survivors of trafficking. These survivors of trafficking had been deceived with the promise of a good job in Cambodia, trafficked across the border into Thailand, brought to a port not far from Bangkok, and then sold onto fishing vessels that traveled to Malaysian waters. When they found out that they had been tricked, they asked the captain to go back home, and he told them, "No, you can't. You've been sold to me." They eventually escaped when they were in Malaysian waters and were able to make their way back home, where they met IJM, and we helped to provide them aftercare assistance and legal assistance in their case. We were able to secure convictions of traffickers in both Cambodia and Thailand related to this network.
Thankfully, IJM and authorities brought Ron back to shore and he was able to return home while the men who trafficked him were put behind bars. But there were still many men lost at sea.
We must rally businesses and governments to proactively protect their workers. Did you know that businesses with a turnover of over £36 million are required to have a modern slavery statement on their website? Let's go over to IGM advocate and QC, James Evans.
So what should a modern slavery statement contain? Well, the aim of a modern slavery statement is to foster a better understanding of the company or organisation, its reach, and the steps it is taking to minimise the risk of slavery occurring in its operations and supply chains. Specifically, the Modern Slavery Act creates two legal requirements for these statements. The first is that they must be published, first on an organisation's UK website if they have one, with a link in a prominent place on their homepage. The emphasis is on visibility and is intended to enhance reporting standards, encouraging companies publicly to demonstrate their commitment. Secondly, the statement must be approved by the board of directors and signed by a director. This assigns ownership to senior level management and encourages their proactive involvement in tackling abusive practices in their business operations. It also means that they can be held account at board level. Companies that do not meet these two basic requirements are quite simply breaking the law. I think companies should consider the Modern Slavery Statement and the work that must be undertaken to produce it rather like having a CT scan. It can be scary, but it will ultimately help diagnose the problem, which is the first step to treatment and cure. The more effort businesses put in to funding modern slavery statements and to doing the research behind them, the better the prospects of finding any slavery that exists in their supply chain, helping the victims and preventing more people from becoming victims. The government has announced that it will host a new digital government reporting service, a platform which does this. And this new service, which is due to be launched later this year, should make it easier for consumers, investors and civil society to hold organisations to account for the steps they have taken or not taken to root out modern slavery and protect victims. Modern slavery statements are a powerful way of holding businesses and organisations to account for what they do or don't do to find slavery in their supply chains. Unless we engage with these statements, they will be nothing more than documents collecting dust on an unclicked link on a website. Businesses are made up of people, none of whom want other humans to be in slavery. So let's play our part in holding organisations to account.
This week, we would like you to use your consumer power and engage the businesses that you buy from. The Modern Slavery Act requires that organisations that supply goods and services and have a consolidated global turnover of over £36 million a year provide a trafficking and slavery statement. Will you take action this week by spending time writing to the shops that you go to and reminding them of their commitment? You can check the Modern Slavery statements on their websites and ask them what they are doing to ensure that their goods and services are not tainted by slavery.
Super interesting stuff that. Thank you so much to all of our speakers. We'll catch you next week. Bye.